More, let's welcome in Batya Ungar-Sargon. She's the host of Batya Saturday right here on NewsNation. Batya, it's great to meet you, obviously, especially on the cusp of such a historic night. Let's talk a little bit about this ceasefire. The fact of the matter is the deal seems as if it's holding. The hostages, they are expected to be released any moment now. It could be a breaking news situation in a moment's notice. Tell me a little bit about where things stand and if you really truly believe that this is the end of this conflict that has been really going on for a very long time, but obviously most certainly since October 7th when it really elevated.
So thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here at this auspicious time. I think we're all sitting here, holding our breaths. Cannot believe that these men are coming home. And I will admit to you, I did not think that this was possible, Alex. I really did not believe that we would see these young men alive again, which only speaks to the miraculous nature of what has happened here. What Donald Trump pulled off was truly, truly extraordinary. And I think that when people sort of don't have faith that we'll get to stage 2 of this peace deal, they're really underestimating the level of the miracle that we have just all witnessed with our own eyes, to where Hamas has given up their only bargaining chip because their paymasters instructed them to do so. So I truly think Trump is rewriting the rules of the Middle East, and I'm possibly come next.
Batya, what do you see the future being for Gaza at this time? We know the Trump plan includes a potential for a path to Palestinian statehood, but do you see that being a realistic goal here?
It's funny, I think Trump doesn't care very deeply about definitions or categorizations. He's certainly not interested in these fictions about, shared values or that we're somehow going to export American-style democracy to the Middle East. He doesn't believe in shared values. He believes in sharing value. He sees this very much through an economic lens, to where if everyone is prospering, everyone will be happy, and you can build peace out of that. And I think that's really where he's coming at this from. He's made partners out of the moderate Gulf Muslim states by going there and bringing back investment into the United States. And so he's interwoven our economies. And I think he sees that as the best promise you can give somebody, the best credibility you can build a relationship on. So whether it's a state or not a state, I think he's a lot less interested in than the idea that he has partners now who are going to be investing in Gaza, making it livable again. And from there, we'll see what the next stage is.
Batya, I read over some of the notes that you shared with me ahead of this interview and ahead of this show, and you mentioned the fact that both sides are really cheering on President Trump, seeing him as the crucial focus of this deal being reached. I'm wondering if maybe they see President Trump in the same image, both sides, whether it's Israel or Gaza. Do they see him in the same light, or do they have a certain visual image to the president, depending on what side of that border is?
It's such an interesting question. I have a friend who's Palestinian. He's in his 60s. He lives in Kenosha, and he's an Uber driver. And we were talking before the election, and he told me he's voting for Trump because he believes Trump will bring an end to the war. And I think that view was actually very common on the streets in Gaza because of this question of credibility. I think it was very hard to picture Joe Biden pulling anything off because he didn't have that strength. He didn't project belief in his own abilities. And, you can say a lot of things about Trump, but he truly believes that he can do anything he sets his mind to. I do think that the people in Gaza truly see him as a liberator, and that we really don't understand what is possible in this moment. I mean, the weariness they have with this war and with Hamas's leadership, something that has not been covered in the American press yet, is the fact that Hamas has been, in the last 48 hours, killing hundreds of Palestinians, who they accuse of being collaborators with Israel, which is a fiction. They were not collaborators with Israel, but they are now just doing what they've always done. When they can't attack Israelis, they attack their own people. The people of Gaza are so sick of this, and I think that they see real opportunity here.
We know NewsNation is going to have special coverage throughout the early morning hours, including all throughout the day, particularly when President Trump addresses the Israeli parliament. We know he's almost certainly, as you mentioned to me, that he's going to be touting his contributions to actually getting this deal done. But I'm wondering if you think that there's a specific message that the world needs to hear from him beyond just what he did to accomplish this.
So he will definitely say, I'm 100% sure that October 7th would have never happened if he was the president. He'll probably say that more than once throughout the speech. I do think that he will give credit to Bibi Netanyahu, but I think he will also do what he has very cleverly done throughout this negotiation, which is leak to the press all of the ways in which Bibi did not want the deal and Trump pushed him to take it. Every time he leaks that, he's telegraphing to the Israeli people, I'm trying to make this happen. And that gave him a lot of leverage over Bibi because Bibi knew that the Israeli people knew that Trump was trying to end this war, which 2/3 of Israelis wanted at this point, the ceasefire deal. So I think he'll talk about that. I think his larger message to the Knesset will be what he told Sean Hannity, he told Bibi, which is Israel cannot fight alone.
Right.
And that in his mind, a big boon out of this ceasefire deal is that the cratering support Israel has faced over the last 2 years, he's hoping to reverse that.
Batya, we only got about 30 seconds left. Tell me what you think Bibi is feeling at this moment. Obviously, this is a historic day for his country, for the world at large. But as you mentioned, there were sort of differing tactics in the way that this whole conflict rolled out over the last 2 years. What's Bibi feeling right now?
I think he's probably thinking about the political future. And he's going to lose a lot of support from the far right over this. And I think he's probably thinking if there is a center that he can make a new coalition with. It may be too early to be thinking about that, but he's very good at positioning himself throughout historic moments when it comes to Israel and figuring out where to go from there.
Batya Ungar-Sargon, host of Batya that airs on Saturdays, every Saturday. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to meet you.
Thanks so much, Alex. God bless. Great to meet you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.